Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to address the revisionist history that's going on around Charlie's Angels. So without further ado, let's get into the story. So I see this tweet from Variety. Elizabeth Banks regrets Charlie's Angels marketing. It wasn't a feminist manifesto, just an action movie. Of course, this elicited some responses on Twitter, like this one from Sierra Whiskey, published 1 month apart. Straight white males, this movie is not for you, followed by, why are straight white males refusing to see this movie? Maybe it's because you told them this movie is not for you. This is the sort of thing that we continue to talk about even to this day. Example, the primary example being She-Hulk. Don't like it, don't watch it. G4 TV, don't like it, don't watch it. This is not for you. And then, of course, whatever it is fails miserably, and they blame the very audience that they did not want and that they specifically told this is not for you. But I really like the Critical Drinker's take on this, and I remember watching the Critical Drinker's review of this movie a long time ago, and I believe it sums it up the best. Correction, it was a shit action movie. That's the reason nobody watched it. Let's go to the Variety article. Elizabeth Banks regrets Charlie's Angels marketing. It wasn't a feminist manifesto, just an action movie. Looking back at the poor box office performance of her 2019 Charlie's Angels reboot, Elizabeth Banks says she has some regrets about the film's marketing. You mean the marketing that she was involved in? Like, she literally gave dozens and dozens of interviews to all sorts of different news outlets and reiterated what this movie was actually about. We'll see some of those in a moment. Quote, I wish the movie had not been represented as just for girls, even though that's what I said at the time. Because I didn't make it just for girls, but I did. Well, there was a disconnect on the marketing side of it for me. There certainly was, because you were involved in the marketing, and if you don't remember that, that's quite a disconnect. Banks said that, quote, when women do things in Hollywood, it becomes this story. There was a story around Charlie's Angel that I was creating some feminist manifesto. I was just making an action movie. Well, if there was that story, I wonder where that story came from. Well, let's look into this. But let's go and look at this interview given to Collider back in 2019. Elizabeth Banks wants Charlie's Angels reboot to send a message. Quote, believe women. Interesting. So there's no narrative, but, well, there's a message. Okay. Letting female rage express itself was one of the most important aspects of the new installment of the Charlie's Angels franchise. One of the ingredients of this movie was supporting and believing women. She says, well, we literally have a character who is essentially working at a big corporation and is not being believed or listened to by her bosses. Yeah, no message though. There's no feminist manifesto here, and there just seems to have been a disconnect in the marketing. All of this marketing here, this interview that I gave to Collider along with a small group of journalists, this wasn't really me. Maybe this was someone else. Well, one of the statements this movie makes is that you should probably believe women. Well, we have as much validity in that we're feeling and how we want to go about living in the world, being in the world, and that was really important to me. That we felt like we had characters who were being taken seriously and given a chance to live their best life. In other words, this movie is a sermon. It's a sermon from the Church of Woke. And it was pretty clear that this was going to be just another woke SJW heavily feminist movie, and that's how it was pushed. But if you don't believe me that they were going for all this, well, we've already seen that she's basically lying in her new interview. She's gaslighting us again. Has she ever done this before? Well, yes, she has. Let's take a look. Charlie's Angels reboot won't label Kristen Stewart as gay. Well, the only thing that was important to me was to not label it as anything. It's fine if the media wants to label it. I think that's okay, but I didn't do that. I just let her be herself in the film. This was from November 9th, 2019, and this was in Pink News. Now, literally 3 days later, in Pride Source, November 12th, 2019, Elizabeth Banks talks queering Charlie's Angels and how Kristen Stewart is definitely gay in the movie. Notably, Stewart portrays her secret agent character Sabina Wilson, the first angel to be depicted as a member of the LGBTQ community to reflect her real-life queer sexuality. Kristen's character is definitely gay in the movie. I mean, she wanted to be gay in the movie, and I'm like, yeah. I made sure we kept that little moment in so that you understand what she was attracted to. So let me get this straight. 3 days before, Charlie's Angels won't label Kristen Stewart as gay, and 3 days later, she's definitely gay in the movie. Just a little revisionist history. But now I want to focus on this quote right here. Ahead of its release, though, Banks told the Herald Sun back in 2019, quote, "If this movie doesn't make money, it reinforces the stereotype in Hollywood that men don't go see women do action movies." This sounds awfully familiar. It sounds like a quote we recently got from Viola Davis. Again, pushing these narratives. Viola Davis saying that the audiences who don't see The Woman King are, quote, supporting the narrative. Again, that black women cannot lead the box office globally. It's all, if you don't go see my movie, then you hate women, obviously. And that's when the movie inevitably flopped because of all of the agenda, and that it was basically about the agenda and nothing else. That there was no story here. I mean, they told you right here that the story was this, that the story was about the women who are not being believed. The message was the story, and the story was the message. And that didn't go over too well. After being told not to go see this, and that this movie is not for you, and that this story is about the message, and if you don't want to see the message, then you shouldn't watch this movie.
If you don't like it, don't watch it. Peace!
Lo and behold, the movie bombed. Elizabeth Banks says Captain Marvel and Wonder Woman were hits only because they belong to the male genre. Wow. This is the worst kind of covering your ass I've ever seen. The well-reviewed Charlie's Angels reboot is the latest studio box office bomb of the fall movie season, following the footsteps of such disasters as The Goldfinch, Gemini Man, Motherless Brooklyn, and most notably Terminator Dark Fate, which was of the same kind of ilk. The Elizabeth Banks directed action comedy failed to crack $9 million at the box office over its opening weekend. IndieWire's box office expert Tom Brugman says the film will be a significant loss for Sony. Banks gave an interview to the Herald Sun that is now proving to be somewhat controversial. Called out a potential box office bomb as being sexist. If this movie doesn't make money, it reinforces a stereotype in Hollywood that men don't go see women do action movies. Now, as some moviegoers were quick to point out, though, Charlie's Angels bombing doesn't exactly prove that men will not go pay to see an action movie driven by women. Because earlier that same year, the Brie Larson starring Captain Marvel did gross $426 million in the US. Now, we can all debate over how good that movie is. That movie ended up making $1.1 billion in the worldwide box office. At the end of the day, it seems like a lot of people did go see the movie. Now, the movie does have problems from a story aspect. I don't know, man. It's just, yeah. Okay, in any case, Wonder Woman also ended its summer 2017 run with $821 million worldwide. That was a fantastic movie. I really enjoyed that movie. I mean, I didn't know that I was going to enjoy it as much as I did. I'm going to have this article here, which makes it pretty clear that yes, Elizabeth Banks has been absolutely lying to us about what Charlie's Angels was. And she says point blank in here, "My film is loaded with sneaky feminist ideas." This is from The Guardian. Actor, writer, and director Elizabeth Banks is the rarest of people in Hollywood, a woman who gets her voice heard. Oh, but I thought this whole thing, the whole narrative was that they don't. Now, Banks recalls going into a meeting at Sony to announce simply, quote, "I want to direct a Charlie's Angels movie. To be able to work for a big studio with a big budget, they don't usually just hand that out, but I felt ready and confident." As Pitch Perfect 2 earned $69 million on opening weekend, setting a record for a first-time director. bringing Banks accolades as a filmmaker. Suddenly, she was in demand in a way she hadn't quite been previously. But the issue there is that, well, Elizabeth Banks didn't write Pitch Perfect 2. It was written by Kay Cannon and Mickey Rapkin. On the other hand, she wrote the screenplay for Charlie's Angels, and she injected all of this stuff into it. You can't blame it on someone else. She's the one who wrote the screenplay. So who else is there to blame? And let me tell you, I mean, this movie should have been loved by the critics because look, it's a movie. It's written and directed by a woman. Not only that, but it's a movie about female action heroes. And not only that, there are females of color in here too. And not only that, but one of them is gay. This movie checks all the boxes. So from a woke standpoint, it has everything going for it. And yet, critics hated it more than audiences did. I guess those critics are just misogynist. Don't they realize that they're sending the message that, women can't do action movies? What's funny is critics even liked the original Charlie's Angels movie more than they liked the reboot. But then we have to ask ourselves, so why is all of this coming up now, and why is suddenly this revisionist history around Charlie's Angels 2? And I think it's this quote that we see in the Variety article that tells us everything we need to know. The Pitch Perfect 2 director added that she, quote, would have liked to have made a Mission Impossible, but women aren't directing Mission Impossible. I was able to direct an action movie only because it starred women and I'm a female director. And that is the confine right now in Hollywood. It seems pretty clear that she's gunning for a Mission Impossible film. Let's just leave it with this. Well, but that means you recognize pretty quickly when you're in a process with somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. Like someone who's writing a movie for the first time. And when you're trusting your performance with someone who doesn't know what they're doing, it's terrifying. It happens to everybody. We all work with people who are not up to the job. And it seems like in this case, obviously, Elizabeth Banks was not up to the job and she wrote a terrible movie and then it didn't turn out well for her. So now she's trying to basically rewind a little bit and fudge and lie and gaslight everybody as to why Charlie's Angels failed, all so that she can maybe get a crack at failing up and directing a Mission Impossible film. But that's just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. In the meantime, if you want to continue to smash the narrative, then smash that like, subscribe, and share buttons. We are currently pushing for 1,000 subscribers. So if you're enjoying this content, then please do subscribe. Every subscription helps. That's all I have for now. I will see you in the next video. Have a great day.